This is going to be pretty informal. So yeah, I'll just jump right in. Just an overview of what we're going to go through, who I am, which has probably been covered, what's AMI, AGI, and ARI. Looking around, I think probably most of you know. Brief description of AMI and AGI, then getting started with ARI, and the detailed example of ARI in questions. Okay, so I write the daily Asterisk news, CEO of VentureVoIP, VentureIP, Synapse, create offshore company, a few other companies. Anyway, write SmoothTalk, which is a predictive dialer, message broadcasting platform. Largest client of that's running around 100 Asterisk servers. I'm from New Zealand. I live in Panama and Orlando, kind of traveling backwards and forwards every couple of weeks. So the AMI is Asterisk Manager Interface. It's a real-time interface to Asterisk's internals to some extent. It's used via a telnet connection or basically any kind of network-based connection. You send commands to it and it responds with responses and events. AGI is the Asterisk Gateway interface. That's what you would run from the from the Asterisk dial plan. So if you wanted to write a script in the Asterisk dial that gets run from the Asterisk dial plan, it reads from the standard input and writes the standard output. So you can basically use any language you like. And that's more in the context of a single call, whereas the Asterisk Manager interface is within the context of the whole PBX. Okay, so ARI is the new, well, okay, I guess. Yeah, do we want to start the introduction again? We've got a few more people just kind of.
It was late. All right. So we're only like 2 minutes in. Sorry, I got a little jumpy. Didn't know how the keynote was going. I knew it was a little late, and I went ahead and started things off. So for those of you who were here when we started the first time, we're actually just going to start right over. So sorry about that.
So,
I just got too jumpy there.
Yeah,
it's just a little too much. It's that built-in high-resolution timer in my head.
Yeah, exactly.
We got 1 minute off, and I was freaking out.
Speaking of, when trying to set up for the demo, I set up Asterisk on my laptop using the KQ timer.
Yep.
Didn't work at all. No audio. It wasn't until I module unloaded that I started getting audio passing. I was like, sweet. I was like, because I was doing everything on the local machine, and I was like, well, there's no NAT, obviously. I should be getting audio. And then I'm like, it's got to be like a timer interface or something, So.
That one's really good if you need second precision.
Right. Now it's running on P3 and it seems to be fine.
Well, even that one's kind of,
it seems to be passing audio, so yeah.
All right, so good morning, everyone. My name is Malcolm Davenport. I work for Digium. Today we're going to have a bunch of fun talks, really excited. The first one we're having this morning is from Mr. Matt Riddell. Matt Riddell is responsible for the daily Asterisk news. He's been doing it by himself for the better part of a decade, which is a really long time. A lot of useful information out there, and it's just really fun to read and kind of keep up with what's going on in the Asterisk community. So thank you very much for that, Matt. Matt here is also behind a company called VentureVoIP, which does pretty much everything you need relative to ITSPs if you want to kind of get going into that business. He's also the third most popular speaker from New Zealand by way of Panama today, and he's going to talk to you about AGI and AMI in Asterisk and the transition to ARI, which is the Asterisk REST interface. It's part of Asterisk 12, and he's got some really fun stuff on that in his presentation. So take it away, please.
Am I the third most popular speaker from New Zealand or the third most popular speaker? Because I don't know that there's many other people from New Zealand.
Well, it's kind of a fly to the Concords kind of thing there.
Right,
third most
okay,
popular folk band, yeah.
Okay, as I said, I'm Matt Riddell. This is just a quick overview of what we're going to go through. I'll explain who I am, although he's already covered that. What's the AMI, AGI, and ARI? Brief description of AMI and AGI before we can throw it away and move on to the ARI. Then I'll give you a quick example of how it works, and then I'll show you an in-depth, well, reasonably in-depth, it took me like 5 hours to write or something, application that uses the ARI, and kind of just an example of what kinds of things that you could create with it. So I write the daily Asterisk news, CEO of VentureVoIP, Synapse, createoffshorecompany.com, a couple other companies, VentureIP. I'm the author of Smooth Talk, which is a predictive dialer and message broadcasting platform, written in C, largest customers using around 100 Asterisk servers. And I'm from New Zealand. I live in Panama and Orlando at the moment. I'm splitting my time half and half. Okay, so first of all, the Asterisk Manager interface is an interface to connect to Asterisks and view channels that are going on at the moment, read events that happen as Asterisk does things, and you can create channels and list channels, do things like that you want to do. It's a real-time interface to Asterisk's internals, but it's kind of a little bit higher level. The AGI interface is the Asterisk Gateway interface. It's so that you can write code that you run from the dial plan. So at a particular extension, you might want to run a script that goes off and queries your database, finds the next sound file to play or whatever, and then plays it. You can write an AGI or AMI in any language you like. AMI reads and writes from a socket on port 5038, and the AGI reads and writes from the standard input and standard output. So Asterisk tells you things over your input, and you write out of your output. Okay, so the ARI is the new interface in Asterisk 12. It's absolutely awesome. It took me a couple of days to figure it out, Friday night and Saturday morning, but it allows you, the idea is to be able to create Asterisk applications without using C. I mean, you can write it in C if you want, but you don't have to. So when I say Asterisk applications, I'm not meaning applications that use Asterisk as part of their toolkit, but you could actually rewrite, for example, AppQ or any of the apps that sit in Asterisk that you can, command show. So it uses the REST interface for commands. REST is basically like an HTTP connection. You use get, post, delete, put. And you use stasis with WebSockets to receive events. I'll give a bit more detail on how that works as we kind of get into it. So using the Asterisk Manager interface, an example would be to telnet to port 5038 on your machine, log in, issue some commands, and receive some responses or events. An example of an AGI, as I said before, you run something that you run from the dial plan and read and write from the standard input or output. I notice a lot of people run Func ODBC and things like that directly from the dial plan. AGI is probably an easier way to do that because you can work in the language that you like, and yeah. One of the other things with AGI is you can use fast AGI, which allows you to connect over a network socket to a server that's serving you an AGI application. Okay, so before we get started with this, AGI and AMI are basically no longer needed. You can write apps with them if you like, but you can do everything, or will be as things get added, with the ARI. It's so much nicer. I don't know if anyone's written applications that talk to the Asterisk Manager interface, but passing responses and events is just horrible. It's been difficult for a long time, and ARI is just totally a breath of fresh air. I didn't say before, but when you send a request or something to ARI, the responses you get are in JSON. So like in PHP, for example, you go JSON decode, boom, you've got an object, and you can query that object and deal with that object in real time. It's just so much easier. You don't have to do any parsing. You don't have to worry about anything. You just get sent back a response, and it's just easy to use. So there's a couple of things that basically normally I would start writing my speech earlier this morning, slightly hungover and kind of blurry, but this time I decided that seeing as I didn't really know anything about ARI, I would start working on it on Friday. And so I went to the Asterisk website, the wiki page, and started looking at the documentation that's there. There is documentation of what commands you send, what commands you receive, but there's no general overview of how to connect and what parsing looks like and things like that. So a couple of things that you need to get started. The first thing you need to do is make sure that it's enabled. The configuration for ARI is inside ari.conf. Setting it pretty, you could set pretty equals no, but it kind of defeats the purpose. That makes it so that it's human readable, but it's just one of the main benefits of it is that it's not human readable, that it's in JSON. Okay, so then this is similar to what you would do in the Asterisk Manager interface. You set up a user that's going to be able to connect. Are they a read-only user? What's their password? That's like setting a secret or whatever. Obviously, the username at the top is the user that you're going to connect with, and password's your password that you're going to want to use. You can use a couple of different password methods. For the demos, I'm just using plain, but you probably should be using an SHA password because you're going to be, generally speaking, passing this over an unsecure connection. Okay, so the first thing that got me that was obviously causing it to not work was that you have to enable the web server in http.conf. That's in etc asterisk. And then this URL is basically the wiki page. If you just search on Google for asterisk 12 REST API, it'll give you a link to it rather than having to write that down. But yeah, that's where everything's kind of described. I'll quickly jump across to it. So basically what you've got here is, it's probably easier if I just show channels, for example. In the documentation, it's broken down, it's automatically generated from the code. So as the code changes, the documentation changes as well. And basically what it's broken down by is the things that you can get or post, delete, put. For example, if you do a GET request and get /channels, you'll get passed back a list of the channels. If you click on list channel, it says, okay, it's going to pass you channels. You can just click on expand source and it will show you what it's going to look like. So the type of information that you're going to get. I'll run through a more detailed example of it. You don't have to figure it out from there. Okay, so to use the ARI, you get, post, delete, or put. I keep leaving off put, but anyway, get, post, delete to, or from rather, or your server /ARI/something. And that something is, at the moment, asterisks, channels, bridges, recordings, playback, and sounds. So for example, asterisks is to get like information about your asterisk server. Channels is to create channels, drop channels, bridge. Actually, I think the channels interface gives you the opportunity to start playback of sounds. And the playback allows you to deal with a playback once it's been created, which was actually something that threw me as well. Bridges are the connections of multiple channels. Now the cool thing in ARI is basically what's happening is when you make a call, for example, you're going to put it into an ARI, a stasis application. So you write a piece of code that's your stasis app that you run in the background, and it connects to asterisks, and it will receive events, and it registers itself as like my app or hello or whatever. And the example that I'm going to give it registers itself as hello. So then you've got a status app called hello, and you can send calls there. And so it's like having a queue or something where you can hold calls. You can send these calls into the status app, and then you can deal with them. So you can do whatever you want with these channels. So the cool thing is that you can send a call into a status app, and it will sit there, and it can wait for you to do something with it. You can then create a bridge and go, okay, look, I want to take this channel, and I want to make another channel, and I want to put those two channels into a bridge, and then they're talking together. You can then do things like playing audio onto that bridge. So while they're talking, you can play an audio file, you can stop audio files, you can scrub backwards and forwards, you can do recordings, all these kinds of things in real time from the REST interface, which is really, really awesome. Okay, so a really, really simple PHP example is here. What this does is it uses Matt and test as the username and password. It connects to the local machine, and one of the ways that you can pass the username and password in is to put $API key equals, and then use it. That's a colon, but it's HTTP encoded, so use a colon pass, and then just get the contents of the response, JSON, decode it, and print it out. So what that does is it basically connects to Asterisk, gets information about what's going on in Asterisk, puts it in a string, decodes the string, and then prints it out as an object. So that's a really simple example of it. In reality, you will probably be using something like curl or a library in order to do this. The one that I'm going to be using for the examples is called Pest, PHP REST interface, and it's really simple. So Pest is a PHP REST library. You can get it on GitHub educoder/pest. All you do is you include pest.php, you create a pest object, and then you call pest post, pest get, pest delete, and it will pass you back whatever the response is. So you can go result equals pest get, result equals pest post, and obviously the URL that you want to post and get to. Okay, so I'm going to give a demonstration of an application using ARI for foreign call centers to sell products without sounding like a foreigner. So the idea is that, let's say I am sitting in a country, Philippines we'll say. I'm sitting in Philippines, I want to sell a product, and I can understand English, but when I speak with people, they don't really understand what I'm saying. So instead of speaking, what we're going to be doing is playing audio files. Pre-recorded audio files, pre-recorded rebuttals, pre-recorded pieces of your script. I don't know if any of you have been doing much in a call center environment, but pretty much everything comes off a script anyway. People don't leave script, so they say something, and then if someone has a problem with that statement, then they say a rebuttal. And so this kind of stuff can actually be kind of coded pretty easily. So what I'll do is I'll show you an example of it working, and then I'll show you how it works. So this is a little bit dangerous. I'm going to be making a phone call through my server in New Zealand to my cell phone, but it should be fine. Okay, so let's just log in. So by logging in, what I've just done there is I've told the Asterisk REST interface to put a SIP channel into the Stasis application, and it called me, and it's now sitting there in the Stasis application. Okay, so there's my phone number. Let's dial the number. There's going to be a pretty severe post-dial delay, seeing as it's going to New Zealand and then going to a cell phone network. Okay.
Hi, this is Matt Riddell from VentureVoIP. I'm just wondering if this is a good time to talk to you about Smooth Talk.
Okay, so then if someone says, yes, that is a good time, then you could say something like,
Okay, great. Well, Smooth Talk's a predictive dialer engine and message broadcaster that will basically make you a whole lot more money.
and
Okay, great. Well, thanks for your time. Have a great day. Bye.
okay, so you see the general idea. There's a couple of cool things that are, okay, cool. There's a couple of cool things that are going on in the background, like if I kill my agent, their phone, the web interface notices that the phone's disappeared and updates some CSS and things like that so that they know that they're not logged in. Okay, so let's have a look at what just happened there. Starting from the login page. So we got a username and password and just logged them into the system. Once we confirm that they got the right username and password, we set some session values, and then we start doing something interesting. So first, I wonder if I can get that any bigger. Not easily. Okay. First of all, what we do is that we set up our username and password. This is kind of this Matt and test. And we create a new Pest object. So Pest equals new Pest in the server that we want to connect to, which is my local laptop. We set up the authentication using Matt and test. We set up some curl options, and then we store that Pest object in the session. And the reason that we store that Pest object in the session is so that later on, when we're dealing with anything in the website, we can just refer to it as session Pest. So it doesn't have to be, I mean, it's kind of a global variable, which is kind of bad and stuff, but anyway. Then we redirect to the main page. Okay, now, the main page has got some buttons, right? Let's start with the phone interface at the top. The main page has got some buttons. For example, login. And that calls login equals 1. So let's go to login. Okay. First of all, what we do is we call create channel. Okay, so we've logged into the web interface, and we create. Let me actually, before we go into that, I'm going to quickly show you a Stasis app. Okay, so this is a Stasis, a WebSocket client that I think Josh Culp gave me, or someone gave me over IRC on Saturday, that will connect to Asterisk over the WebSockets interface and listens for things. So because he wrote it in Python and I couldn't find anything in PHP that would do a decent WebSockets client, I just wrapped that in PHP. So basically, I run I run the daemon, and I just read its standard input and output. So what's happening there? Oops. Is that we've got this Stasis application running. So if I quit it, so we've got Asterisk here, right? You can see that as well. So it's just deactivated the Stasis app. If I run the pipe, it activates the Stasis app. It gets a connection from the local machine over WebSockets, and it activates the Stasis app. And what you can do with once you've got that running, what I do is I run pass response on anything that comes in, and that comes out of Stasis. So pass response just looks at the response, and at the moment all it does is it prints out that it's starting or ending a channel. It doesn't really need to do anything very exciting. You could maybe save some of your events into the database or whatever you like. But all that we really need from that app is for there to be a Stasis application that channels can connect to and from. So let's go back to once we've logged in. So we're going to run this create channel command, and we're going to pass in the Pest session, the Pest object, and my SIP string. So my SIP string it comes out of the database actually, I think. I just have a customers table, and in that customers table I've got SIP/Matt. I just did that so that I can create 100 different customers, and they can all have their own SIP extensions, and basically that's where I'm going to call out to for each of the different agents. So what does create channel do? If I go into, I think it's an ARI functions. Okay. The first thing that you need to do is you need to URL encode things that you want to send across. So SIP/something is going to need to be URL encoded so that you can pass it across. So I just run a URL encode on the endpoint. An endpoint is like a user, a peer. It's an object in an asterisk. So sip/mat or ix2/x2/mat, whatever. It's an object that you're going to call to. Okay, now, normally all that you would have to do is get the response of pest post ARI channels endpoint equals and the endpoint and the app that you want to send it to. So what that does is you're sending a post to the ARI channels thing and you're passing it an endpoint and the status app you want to connect to. So if we jump back across to here, you'll see if we go into the channels API and look at post channels, that creates a new channel. And the parameters that you can pass to it are an endpoint, which is required, so you have to be dealing with somebody, and you could give them either an extension, a context, and priority, which would just send them into the dial plan and do kind of standard asterisk stuff, or you can pass in an app, which is what we're doing here. An app is a status app. This is where it gets really cool, because if I send something into the dial plan, I've got to do something with it. I've got to put someone in a queue or do something with that immediately. If I put them in a status app, they can just sit there. They're sitting there, and I should theoretically have a link to an object that I can deal with. Unfortunately, there's a bug at the moment, which is number 22485, which means that we don't actually have the channel ID once we create it. That'll get fixed pretty quickly, and I would assume that you would go channel equals pest post, but you can't do that at the moment. So what I quickly do instead is I break down the endpoint and I create a new string that's just sip/mat or ix/VentureVoIP or whatever, and then I look for that channel. So the way that I look for the channel is that I go pest get ARI/channels. And what that does is it returns me an object once it's JSON decoded, and I can check through that list and see, okay, what are these? It will give me an object that's a whole lot of different channels. I can through each of the responses and check and see if it matches my channel. If it matches my channel, then I set my ID to be the channel ID, and then I return that channel ID. So let's have a look at what that actually does. If I go into header.php and change that. Okay, so I got this script that's running in the background and it's checking what channels are going on and putting them in the top of the, it does a whole lot of things. It changes CSS if someone disappears, things like that. But basically what it's doing is it's doing pest get ARI channels. It's hard to see when I highlight it. So it's just getting the channels and I'm doing some stuff with it. Okay. One of the things it does is it prints out on the screen the JSON decoded channel list. So let's just quickly log in. Okay, that's not going to be tall enough. So if I go style, Awesome. I bet that we have just crashed Apache. No, we have not. Let's log out and log back in. Changing the CSS should not cause a web page to stop working, but it has. For some reason, look, the new 0 that I'm typing has got a line through it, and the old 0 that was there before doesn't have a line through it, which looks like an O rather than a 0. But anyway, let's copy that one and paste it again. Okay, awesome. And of course, if it's 600, it's not going to work. No, it doesn't want it to be any bigger than that. Okay, awesome. No, I know what it is. Status. because that was the... Okay, I was changing the height of the header, which was making the whole screen look white. Okay, so we've got a list. We've basically gone to the ARI and we said, okay, what channels have we got going on? We've been returned an object. We've been returned a JSON response, and we've converted it into an object. There's only one channel going on the server at the moment, so it's just item 0. It's got properties and values. For example, it's got an ID, it's got a state, the name of the channel, the caller, these are the caller details for the caller ID, and who it's connected to, caller ID, account code, where it is in the dial plan, which is actually nowhere, and when it was created. So you can see from there, if I created a channel called sip/mat, the thing that I'm looking for is to find something which has got sip/mat in it, and then I'm matching against that. It's a kind of a pretty horrible hack until such time as we actually get a response to our originate. And if I jump down here and one thing that's happening there is I'm also printing out my ID and I'm storing that in the session. And what that allows me to do is whenever I want to deal with creating a channel, creating a bridge, things like that, you're going to be always putting in IDs of channels into things. So let's have a look at the bridge. So when we go to play a file, play audio. Okay, this is pretty cool. So actually, probably a better idea is dial new first. So if I dial a new channel, which is, remember when we went down to here and I typed in my cell phone number and dialed the number? That's called dial new. So what dial new does is it does the create channel, which is what we saw before, and sets my peer to be set to the channel ID of the response. And then we redirect, we wait for the channel to come up, and then we redirect, and then we get channels. Okay, we're looking for the channel to come up, and then we redirect to create bridge. So what create bridge does is it, first of all, it creates a bridge by doing post to the Pest object, ARI/bridges, and the type of bridge that I'd like to create. I want to create a mixing bridge, so we get the response of that, and that gives us back an ID. So we can look at basically JSON to code, which gives us an object rather than a JSON text, and we set my bridge to be equal to the ID that we get given back. So then what we do is we do a post to ARI bridges, and then my bridge, that's the one we just created, and we call add channel. And first of all, we add in the channel that we are ourselves, which is my ID, and then we add in the channel my peer. So basically, what happens is that we create a bridge, and we go, okay, look, we've got this channel that we started with, we've got another channel that we're creating that we're dialing out to, create a bridge, chuck those two channels onto the bridge, and then we're going to play back some audio onto that bridge. So as soon as you get connected to a person at the other end, we're going to want to play some audio straight away. So we redirect to play audio. Play audio takes the file name, and basically all it does is, okay, first of all what it does is it tries to delete any playback that's happening at the moment. So I store a session thing called audio playing. So if I click to play an audio file, I want to stop what's playing at the moment first instead of playing like 10 different audio files at the same time. So then what it does is it posts to the bridge that it wants to play an audio file, and it's a sound, and the name of the sound is play audio, and the language is English. So what that does is it plays the audio file onto the bridge, and of course we get a response from it, and I set the response to be the audio playing ID. So the cool thing about that is that we're now we've created a channel, we're putting two channels into a bridge, and we're then playing audio onto the bridge, and we're getting the response of it. Now you notice there that we did media equals sound. You can actually, this is in the bridge interface, bridge, play. You can play, I'm not going to find this in a short amount of time. You can play media from lots of different places. So you can actually play like an audio file off an HTTP server. So you don't have to, in the past you've always had to have a sound sitting in the sound directory inside Asterisk. You don't have to do that anymore. You can actually play it straight off an HTTP interface. Okay. I'm going to jump on to questions because I'm way over time. So I'll let Malcolm kind of...
All right, questions in the back. In just a minute. Run the mic back to you.
Actually, I just wanted to clarify. In ARI, we don't quite have the playing from an HTTP source yet. You can play from a sound or a recording URI.
It doesn't work yet.
It's designed to allow that HTTP to work. It's just not there yet.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've only tested it with the actual sounds, but I did notice that it was... Okay, yeah. Other questions? I did have a quick point on it, is that it would be nice if Asterisk could connect via WebSockets to my WebSocket server. A lot. Yeah, I heard a few people say that, and it would be really nice, just because then I can have my one WebSocket server sitting on my server somewhere, and I might have 10 machines, and then later in the afternoon I've got 20 machines, then later I've got 30 machines, and they all just connect to my ARI server, and I can just fire channels at them. I can kill a server, bring it back up, do whatever I like in the middle of the day without having to worry about anything. So that would be kind of cool.
Another question right over here.
So now I imagine, stasis looks really cool, and so, might not even want to do this, but if you wanted to, end the stasis session and continue on with the dial plan, how would you do that?
There is... I don't know if you can, actually. Yeah. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, context extension priority to continue to. You could redirect as well, couldn't?
Yes, the context extension priority. Yeah, the context extension priority will take you to a particular place. If you omit that, it just goes where the next thing in the dial plan was.
If you were in the dial plan.
Yes.
Any other questions? If you want to, okay.
Got one. While I'm running this over, let me remind you there are feedback forms. If you really liked what Matt talked about, please fill those out, drop them in the bin in the back.
Hi, I would like to know, can you use ARI to receive the status events like publish and subscribe?
Yeah, you can. When you create your status app here in the background, you'll see that this is actually receiving, if my scroll bar works, this is actually receiving all the events. And the way that it did that is it sent a post to */ARI, was it? ARI/events. And when you call ARI/events, so it's the same method that you're doing, but what it returns is a WebSocket to get those events using the ARI. So basically all you have to do is create a WebSocket. You wouldn't have to, if you didn't want to, you don't have to have a separate daemon that's sitting in the background doing things. It could be like using JavaScript or something.
All right, thank you.
All right, anybody else? We've got time for one more question. Going once, twice, sold. All right, thank you very much, Matt.
Cool. Cheers, man.